those traits that have been corrupted by whether it's inherited sin or it's personal sin. It doesn't matter. So inherited sin is just we're born into sin. The flesh is always at war with our spirit, right? But then there's the personal sin, like, I know I shouldn't go over there and kick Josh in the foot, but I'm gonna do it, right? So that's a personal choice. That's a personal sin. Titus 2:1, referring to Christ, says this: He who gave himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good. So when the Holy Spirit takes residence and takes leadership of our heart and mind and spirit, then we have a spirit that wants to do good. Apart from him, not so much. We fall short. When we become followers of Christ, we become aware of our unique creation and realize that we serve a greater purpose. We want to identify, understand, and make progress to fulfill our purpose. And we realize that our traits have eternal value. And that really helps me, and I hope it helps you when you're in a really, really deep valley. My connectedness, if you have connectedness, this is something that you experience, is everything happens for a purpose. And then combined with my positivity, I'm like, and God will work it all out. It'll be okay. Even though I'm sad, it doesn't take away the sadness. I still have to experience that. But God is going to redeem that because that's who he is. God is now and forever will be a redeemer. So whatever horrible thing you're facing, just know, I don't know how, I can't explain it, but he will use that for a blessing. Many of you know, and some of you don't know, but my kids were trafficked at a young age. Lots of issues there for a long, long time. And so you're at this place where you're like, there is no way that God could use this. He can't redeem this. How can he redeem this? But I tell you, my story is that he has redeemed it. And my Hannah, when she was 16, she gave a testimony at a sunrise Easter service. And she said, I don't know that I would ever sign up for that kind of abuse or experience ever. But she said, I can't stand here and tell you that I would opt out. As hard as it was and as difficult as it is to manage PTSD and all of the other things that come with that, she said, because of what happened, her cousin, this is her speaking, my cousin was rescued from a situation she'd been in for 9 years. She was 9 years old when that happened to my kids, and then because of what happened consequently, we were able to break up this pedophile ring, right? So she's like, if I opted out, what would have happened? To not just my cousin, but all the other children that she didn't have names for, she didn't know who they were. We were able to break that up. So God redeems that, and my children are healed.
Amen.
And so I just want to encourage you that no matter what you're facing, just know that that's who God is. He is the Redeemer, and he will use it for his glory if you let him. So the more we understand ourselves, the more we can understand our relationship with God and his care for us and others. We all have traits and strengths that are necessary tools for success in fulfilling our purpose. We are also the benefactors of spiritual gifts, and those also empower us to grow in our personal and our collective relationship with Christ. And collectively, I mean in the body of believers, the church. Our physical traits work in tandem with our spiritual gifts and our strengths, and they allow us to experience Christ on a new level. With God, the impossible becomes possible. And when we are confident in our identity in him, we do things far greater than ourselves. We begin to not only see through the eyes of Christ, but we begin to function in his power. So some of you, did everybody get their assessment done? Raise your hand if you did not get to your assessment. Did everybody get it done? Okay, great. I didn't know. I know some of you were texting me the last couple of days. We've been working on it, so I was like, if you don't get to it, it's okay. So looking around, look at your table, you can kind of see, I don't have mine up here, but I'll talk about mine in a second, but you can kind of see all the different strengths. You might not have all 34 represented at your table, you probably don't. But which strengths do you think Jesus has?
All of that.
Oh, you're right. All of them. Every single one of these, Jesus has. He has all of them. So, each strength and gift we have is one that he has also. So, he is my greatest standard to live by, and I always fall so short, but I always go, how is my positivity manifesting? Does it look like Jesus? What about my connectedness? Does it look like Jesus would apply his connectedness this way? What about belief? So those things will help you figure out, is my strength being used for good, which is in the balcony, or is it being used for evil in the basement, right? So what are you going to use your power for, good or evil? And we get to choose. And Jesus is always the standard of measure to help you when you're trying to figure it out. Because there's a lot of voices telling us lots of things. Girl, you're going to let him talk to you like that? And you're like, oh, let me take it to Jesus and see if I'm going to let him talk to me like that. I'm not going to let you determine. I'm going to talk to Jesus. So let me have some conversation with him. So that helps a lot. It's so important for us to know who we are and live according to God's plan, because believing in and living for God changes our identity, and that's what drives our behaviors. Many of you have heard the phrase, be true to yourself, right? Everybody heard that?
Yeah.
Yep, be true to you. Well, the world would have us apply that to our carnal nature. Woe to those who do that, right? What we're supposed to apply it to is our redeemed nature. Okay, so Jesus is the one who redeems it. So my input, my belief, my positivity, believe it or not, when it's used in my carnal nature, can be very destructive. And I'll use positivity because lots of people think that positivity can't be harmful, but it can be. So if you have positivity, you might be able to relate with this. Because I see the positive in everything, I can be idealistic instead of realistic. And that's a danger. So I'm thankful that my son Nick and I weren't the only ones in the house, because he's positivity too. And his is a lot more engagement than mine is sometimes. He cannot stand to look at anything negative at all. It just freaks him out. So he just refuses to accept difficult things. So it's very hard. But we have lots of realists in our house, right? So Charles, he's got analytical. That's totally not me. I don't have any of that. And so I lean into his analytical. Hannah's deliberative. Bob's never done his strengths. Can you believe that? But he's in that, he's strategic, analytical, or deliberative. He's one of those. They mirror each other some, but he's one of those. And so I need that. I need that in my life, or my positivity can take me into la-la land a lot, and I can be caught off guard, and it has caught me off guard. I've been in some really difficult situations because of my positivity, okay? So I've learned how to be better at that, and thankfully, I was the only positivity person in my house growing up. So that helped too. They were always telling me about the dangers and all of that. So it's helpful. But it's important for us to let the redeemed nature take over. That's who we want driving our behavior, not the carnal nature. So if you're true to yourself, make sure it's your redeemed self and not your carnal self. Strength Finders is a tool that identifies strengths of individuals so that we can invest our energies according to our strengths instead of trying to be someone we are not. Sure, we can learn new skills and abilities, and some of our lesser strengths we can develop and learn, which is fine, but we really don't want to spend a lot of time on things we don't have aptitude for or a passion for. So when I was growing up, the thing was, you should make a lot of money. You need to do something that brings you a lot of money. Money is happiness, that was my dad's belief. Money is where it's at, so you should go into business. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll become a business major. Wow. I was like, this is the worst thing I ever did in my life. I think this is terrible. I just couldn't comprehend numbers. I hated I took computer and accounting and algebra, all of the things that I hated. And I was like, okay, college is not for me. So that was the thing my final conclusion was, I must not be cut out for college. No, college was fine. When I went back to college later on, I did excellent. But I was not cut out for business. And I was trying to be someone that I wasn't because I thought that's what was expected of me or would bring the results that I thought I wanted for myself. And so we'll talk more about that, about strengths, how it's really important to not spend a whole lot of time trying to be who you're not. Discover who you are, love who you are because of Christ, not because of you. So it won't be, prideful or anything like that. And then go with it because that's where the real power happens. That's what God created you to be. My 5 strengths are belief, connectedness, input, includer, and positivity. Dave, who bailed, his is restorative. He's been through this a few times. Belief, connectedness, relator, and responsibility. Okay? So we have several similarities, but they play out very different based on the combination of our other strengths, our life experiences, where we're coming from. So all of those things factor in. I really depend on Dave a lot because I'm input, right? So if your input or your context, they mirror each other so they can sometimes people will say, oh, I bet you that person's context. Or it could be input, one of the two. I'll explain the differences here in a minute. So my input, I gather all kinds of information, right? So for tonight, I've been gathering tons of information in preparation. So I print out stuff, I have a file that I throw stuff in. You'll see stuff on my floor, all over my floor. Sometimes if you come to my office, right? Because I'm putting things together. I've got all of this stuff. And then I have to take the time, because it's hard work for me, to bottom line all that stuff, right? So I have to sift through it, I have to pray, okay, God, what should I hone in on? Because I'm all over the place with my input, I have all of this information. So I might have 15 hours worth of information, and I only have 45 minutes. So, okay, God, you choose, so that's what I do. If I have to do that quickly, I stink at it. I'm really bad, and I'm probably gonna give you the wrong answer, right? So I will go into Dave's office and go, I need you to bottom line something for me. And so he is not input or context at all. And he can get quickly overwhelmed. You'll see him checking out. Like mentally, he's like, this is so much. And I come in there and I'm like, let me throw this all at you, Dave. And he's like, holy cow. He goes, okay. And he'll stop me like halfway through, if I even get halfway through. And he's like, this is what it is. And I'm like, oh, 99.9% of the time, he's spot on. And I'm like, oh, that's what I needed. You just saved me like a whole afternoon. Perfect, thanks, Dave. Perfect. So it's important that you know your strengths, you know your family's strengths, your team's strengths, and you guys can be way more effective together than one person can ever be independent. I lean into, Suzanne has a mind that I don't have, and so she can bottom line things for me, or I'll say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, and she's like, okay, well, what about this, and I'm like, oh, yes, let's do it, woo! Because I'm not a method girl. I really don't care how we get to the objective. Let's just get it done. So I don't have to worry about all those little details on the way. Now, context likes all of the details, right? But they need those details to get their bearings about them. So when I'm gathering all this stuff, but it doesn't affect my person or my bearings at all. I'm just gathering all this stuff and then I'll throw stuff away. The context person, so if your context, see if this is true. When you're gathering information, it's helping you figure things out, where you are, what decision you're gonna make. So that's what context is. And when you are taking in these details, if someone's like, I'm gonna throw out this detail, we don't need it. You're like, what? No, we have to have it. What are you talking about? I can't move without that piece of it. So it's totally different than input, but they reflect each other because it's gathering a lot of information. Context people tend to be, but they don't have to be, very historical people. So history means a lot to them. Milestones, things, traditions are very important to people with context because it's a part of their identity. So when you just dismiss it or you minimize it, they feel very rejected or kind of like a fish out of water. You know, they're just flopping around like, I don't know what to do. So it's kind of funny. So when I first got here, Dave is the bottom liner, and Devon, who's on our staff, she's context. So she asked a lot of questions. If you've interacted with Devon, you bring her something and she's got lots of questions for you. Because she can't even respond until she has those pieces, right? And sometimes people think she's being challenging, or she's not. She can't give you the answer until she gets context. And so when I got on staff, I saw that interacting, and I was like, it was funny because I've learned with Dave, we've worked together for a long time. I don't know, over 20 years, something like that. But anyway, so I know that because he's a bottom liner, and he's not, I don't think, deliberator. Responsibility. Okay, so belief and responsibility. He feels very responsible for decisions that he makes. They're rooted in what he believes, his principles. So his bottom line will come from that. But if he needs to think about something, he prefers to do that. If he has to come up with an answer right away, he will just say no. Like, if you guys ever see, maybe if you have kids, or if you've done this to your parents, right? Like, one will say no and the other will usually say yes, right? Like, that's normal. So in my house, Bob likes to think he's deliberative, so he likes to think about, more analytical. He's on that thinking process as part of what he does. His decisions are driven from that. So he needs time to think about things. If he's put on the spot and he has to act right away, he would prefer not to act. So it's a no. So I saw when I first got here, I saw like, okay, if people want an answer from David's staff meeting, that's our time that we get together. Team meeting happens on Tuesday morning here if the women aren't present, it's a short meeting. If the women are there, it's a long meeting and it takes us to lunch. So it's just the way it goes. But if somebody brings him information and he has to decide on the spot, he will say no because he wants to think about it. And that's often the only time we connect through the week. Now we text a lot and we have some apps that help us communicate through the week, but there's just a lot of information coming at us. So we were at a meeting and I needed him to think about something. And so I brought something up and I was like, hey, I just wanted to bring this up. And I thought we could, talk about it. And Dave's like, do you want an answer right now? And I was like, no, I don't. I definitely don't want an answer right now because I already know it'll be no if I push you for an answer. And he looked at me like, what? And I thought, I go, yeah, I learned a long time ago that if I push you for an answer right now, the answer's gonna be no. I want you to think about this. We've got weeks. Take as long as you need. We'll come back. Let's cook in your brain for a little while, And if you give him too many details, he starts to shut down. So Devon will throw out lots of context questions because that's how she thinks and processes. And then you'll just see Dave's his eyes kind of glaze over, and so now we're like, well, we've lost Dave, we'll have to come back to this. And then we try to make sure that we all have what we need if we're making decisions, which is very different for everybody. And it helps us to be more effective. It helps us in our family, it's the same thing, and wherever you are in your workplace. So know your people, know yourself, and you'll feel better about the things that you accomplish. We're gonna get into some of the language, the Strength Fighters language. It's almost 7 o'clock, so we've been at it for a little while. Do you guys wanna take a break in 5 minutes? We'll take a restroom break? Okay. All right, well, let me just read this. I'm gonna just read an excerpt from this book. It's called Living Your Strengths. You can read this. I highly recommend that you do. It's a great resource. Everything in your packet is the bottom line to what's in this book. Everything we're going over and everything that's in your packet is just a bottom line of this book. But there are a few things that I thought might be helpful for you to take or actually to have before we start dissecting some of these terms. So American churches are experiencing a power shortage. It's not the kind of problem that can be fixed by opening natural gas fields or drilling oil wells or building electrical plants. The shortage is in fulfilled human potential, unfulfilled. In churches all across the United States, people are not harnessing the power of their innate gifts. They are not fulfilling God's purpose in their lives, and most people don't even know it. A recent national study by Gallup uncovered the roots of this problem. It revealed that most people, 53% actually, do not strongly agree with the following statement. In my congregation, I regularly have the opportunity to do what I do best. 53% of people in churches do not agree with that statement. Clearly, too many individuals' talents and strengths are going unrecognized and unappreciated, and this adds up to an enormous loss of human potential that could be tapped for the transformation of society. We need a revolution in our churches, a strengths revolution, and this book was written to start that kind of a revolution. Calm down back there, Trenton. I see you going, revolution, I'm here, we're starting a revolution. It is kind of fun to think about that, but really that's what our culture needs, right? Like, we need a lot of Jesus. We need a Jesus revolution in this place, right? And it starts with here, and it spreads out. So, and grace, we're talking about grace. Oh, grace is so wonderful, isn't it great? Thank you, Jesus, for grace. I wish that grace defined all of us. If we just walked around and let grace pull us around, we would never have any problems. Even if there were differences, they would never amount to problems if we let grace lead us. So I am praying that the Lord helps us receive his grace more fully than we ever have before. Be thankful and grateful for who we are in God's image and who he created us to be. And then just go to town and change this world for the Lord. Because there's a lot of hurting people. A lot. I wish I had 100 million hours a week, because that's what I could give to how many people are desperately in need of grace and hope. Okay, well, we're going to take a break before we dive into the language part. There's water over there, there's snacks, there's ice, there's fruit and Oreos. So you guys get what you need, take a potty break, and then we'll come back.
Is everything okay? Is it going? Okay. Watch yourself. No, I don't want to see No, he would have been
Okay, with yours, How's your day?
It's been good.
Very good. It's good.
No, anything really cool or no one else making swords? I know some. Not yet. You were there yet. It's awesome. It's like a
I put one down on the box, and then one back. What do you think? Facebook. I'm trying to get more fans on Facebook.
Looks like you're thinking out of
If I get more people, then I can start live. It'd be a lot
I saw.
I don't get probably more again. So if you look at it, it's got this one as the main one, and that one's like up in the side. I don't see anything. Yeah, they shared it online. I don't know how they do it. You gotta check the cameras anyway. We're on cameras. Yeah. Yeah, I got two going. I'm gonna move this one closer though, so that way I can get a better angle over.
No, but it is so funny.
That doesn't block your guys' view, does it? Okay.
I'm under attack. Dodging questions. I never thought of just being like bare bones like everything. I don't even know what that is. That would actually be really fun. I have like a spreadsheet I hand out to her, and she's like reading all of it and walk away. Oh, at the same time. Yeah. That would be so funny. Back in the day, that would be fun. Chance to attack you.
She's done it for a long time, so I can zoom in more on you now. Don't say it like that, Kathy.
I'm okay. I love who I am as long as no one else to me.
You know, you say that every time. And you put it on camera how many times with
And you would think, like, I was shocked, believe it or not, but my mom forced me not to.
Oh, yeah.
I studied eating in front of people all the time, and she said, I don't want you to try what that was.
just met Lauren went home.
I was wondering.
She wasn't feeling it. So it was just stomach. So
I get that, and unfortunately, I wish I could not relate.
Oh, I thought you were about to say security. It's like 200 million calories. That's the new thing called bodybuilding. Come on, bowl, you know.
you got both of them going to where you got this group on the back one, and then you on this one. It's just a wide paint, so it's not like you're well, I'm recording it too if you guys want me to put it somewhere. So
Can we send it to her?
I can probably do that.
That would be great.
I'll have to compile it.
However you want to do it, even if you chunk it.
Okay.
Like session 1, you know,
Well, I
before
might
break.
just put it on YouTube on my YouTube channel like I did.
Yeah, that's true, then I probably.
By the time I get back there, I'm like,
I'll go back.
We don't have
Like, not in I am too. I'm Team Floral. Oh, I just Was that on yours?
No, it's not a strength, motivators, but our strengths is what gives us.
That's what I am.
Relator's not in my top 5.
You're doing great. Thank you. You are. Thank you.
I didn't realize it was until like I started it. I was like,
Yes, that's pretty good. I don't need that. That's pretty good.
this is the yeah. It's amazing how many people they acquire.
So, yeah, it's kind of cool because that whole group is, they were just telling me about some of the guys there. We go to gyms all together and all that stuff.
All right, guys, if you're ready, we'll bring it in here and we'll get started again in just a minute.
If there was one, I didn't pay any at all attention to it.
All right, well, there's no rush back to your tables. I'll just go ahead and get started because I thought about skipping this story, but I thought, you know what, I think I'm gonna share it. It's a short story that I think will help us identify a little bit with the balcony and the basement application of strengths, okay? So, and if you remember, balcony is using your strengths for good, basement using your strengths for evil, okay? So, here we go. So be listening in the story and in your brain, I don't know how your brain works, but for bottom liners, you can go, oh, this is a balcony application. Oh, this is a basement application. See if you can identify those in this story as we go along. So to understand how churches often fail to tap the natural abilities of their congregants, consider the story of Liz and Rick. A married couple in their early 30s, Liz and Rick moved to a new city, and after several months of searching, they found a congregation to join. They went through new member orientation and told the coordinator that they wanted to get involved in the church. They weren't quite sure what they wanted to do, but they knew they wanted to do a lot more than just attend services. A few weeks after they joined, they got a call from the new member coordinator asking them if they would be greeters for services during the month of July. Rick and Liz agreed and dutifully showed up to shake hands with congregants for 5 Sundays in July. So clearly it was in the 5 Sunday month category. And the couple had almost diametrically opposed reactions to their experience. "I loved it," recalls Liz. "This was great. I like meeting new people, and being a greeter made me feel like I was making a contribution to my congregation. I'd do it every week if I could." Let's see how Rick had filtered through this experience. Rick's reaction was not so positive. He remembers, "It was like pulling teeth. I was really uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say or what to do. It doesn't come naturally for me like it does for Liz. I guess I'm just shy by nature. I sure hope no one ever asks me to do that again." By asking Rick and Liz to serve as greeters, the new member coordinator was subscribing to the myth that an active member is a faithful member. The coordinator must have thought, anybody can be a greeter. After all, it's a great way to get to know the members of the congregation. She's not wrong, right? So she asked Liz and Rick to fill roles in the congregation without first discovering their natural abilities, their talents. She lucked out with Liz, who will likely become more engaged by the experience, but if she continues to ask Rick to be a greeter, he will become disengaged very quickly. Why do you think they had different reactions? It's not in their strengths. It's right, Hannah. Yeah, okay. And do you think her ideology of an active member is a faithful member? Do you think how's that gonna play out? Right? There's Carol, danger, danger, right? That's right. No. Rick is, and here's the deal. What I've learned after how many years in ministry, right, is people don't come to you and say, "I hate being a greeter. I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to do that." But my wife, Liz, she loves it. Most people are like, "I don't want to tell them that. Let's just find another church." And I'd say 90% of the time, that's how people handle conflict. Instead of just talking about it, they just are awkward, and let's not talk about it, I feel uncomfortable, let's just run away, so avoidance, right? I didn't realize, because I maybe was avoidance naturally, I don't know, because it was nurtured out of me, so I address conflict, I get it out of the way quick. Let's just talk about it and move on, right? And I just thought that's how everybody did things, but as I got older, I realized, no, most people are the opposite. Most people want to avoid conflict, and because we live in a culture that nurtures political correctness, they don't teach how to deal with conflict. Conflict resolution is not really handled well in our culture, which makes people uncomfortable, right? Because you automatically think, if we don't see eye to eye, it's gonna come to blows, or you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, right? Because that's what we see all the time. So we as the church, we need to be different, and we can be different. So oftentimes, we will lose both Liz and Rick and Liz, their relationship might even get pretty strained. Over the years, I've had couples where one of the couples, one of the members of the couple will call me and say, "So here's what's going on. I'm really torn. My husband or my wife, she's she's not, or vice versa. And so I always say, God is not going to cause conflict within your marriage. That's not a God thing. So, that's just not who he is. That's his covenant. He's not gonna have you do something that's putting you at odds with your husband or wife. So you just pray about it. We love you and we're here for you, and we're not gonna take this personally if you decide you need to go to another church. We just wanna make sure that you are connected with a body of believers in a way that you're both being filled, right? So that's what's gonna happen. There's gonna be maybe some conflict between them until they make a decision, and then there could be resentfulness, because I've seen that before, where they decide to stay. One of them is a little bit more pushy or dominant or whatever, the other one doesn't like conflict and is like whatever, so they decide to stay and it causes marital conflict, or they decide to go and then there's resentment and that causes problems too. So it's just nice when we're transparent and grace leads us, and we don't have to worry about any of that, guys. We just need Jesus. So easy. Right. Okay. All right, well, we're gonna look at some of these terms, and in your packet, you will have a sheet that looks like this. It's really faded, it's light, but it says learn the language of strengths. Okay, so that's the one we're gonna use. These are shortened, just kind of bottom liners on that handout, but I'm gonna go over a little bit more in detail for some of the main languages, or terms in the language. So, strength. A strength is the ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance in a given activity. So obviously it's something you do very well naturally. This ability is a powerful, productive combination of talent, skill, and knowledge. The next term we're going to look at is talents. Talents are naturally recurring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. Unlike skills and knowledge, talents naturally exist without you and cannot be acquired. They are your inborn predispositions, okay? So you can acquire skills and you can acquire knowledge, but you can't acquire talent. So I'll give you an example. So I love football, and I cheered for 10 years. I grew up on the field, my dad was into football, I just was on the football field all the time. I love football. And I did gymnastics, I played softball, but I am not fast. I'm just not fast. I really, 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 really wanted to be fast. And I really, 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 really tried a lot. And it really, 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 really never happened for me. So I just naturally didn't have that talent. And people would say, oh, you can build it, and I did, I got better, but I was never, I was not Tyreek Hill. And I so wanted to be. Man, that guy can run, right? I'm so glad he's on the Dolphins. So I was sad when we lost him from the Chiefs, but then when I heard the Dolphins signed him, I called my son and I was like, fins up, guess who has Tyreek Hill now? So I wasn't sad at all. Anyway, so that's the difference, right? Like you can acquire knowledge and you can acquire skill, and it can improve. You can develop some things, but you can't naturally be something you're not. Then another language or term we're going to look at is skills. Skills are basic abilities to move through the fundamental steps of a task. They can be acquired through formal or informal training. Once you've acquired the skills necessary for a given activity, you have the ability to perform its steps at base level ability. Okay, so what does a skill look like? A skill can be the ability to perform the following fundamental steps: adding and subtracting, processing a customer's insurance claim, using software to prepare a presentation, giving a patient an injection, preparing a lesson plan, checking someone into a hotel, things like that. Where talents, okay, things that you cannot attain, those would include being competitive. If you're not competitive, there's no way you can fake it. Like, you just can't be that way. It's just not in you, right? Picking up on the emotions of others, I'm just telling you, that is something you cannot figure out if you don't have it. Somebody that I love very much totally cannot pick up on others' emotions. And when he tries to, I'm just like, what? Are we in the same room? What is happening here? I'm like, why don't you run that by me? You know, so he just can't pick up on emotions. He's like, what is that? Is that angry, frustration? What is that? Anger? What? I don't know, honey. Maybe they're happy. And I'm like, oh, that person wants to throw a brick at your head. So, I mean, you can't nurture that. Thriving under pressure. Some people do well under pressure and other people don't, and you're not gonna change. You just can't change that up. Making other people laugh. That is something that is naturally done. If that's not what happens with you, you can't do it. It just sounds really flat. Like if you're not good at telling jokes and you try, everybody's like looking at you like, what? And you're like, isn't anybody gonna laugh? That's when you cue the sound guy. Enjoying puzzles, you either like it or you don't. I am not a riddle solver at all. Not at all. I've tried to become good at it. It's not in me. I can't figure it out. So please don't throw riddles at me. I will fail you and myself. Recognizing the uniqueness in others. Envision and clearly articulating a future scenario. That's something, if you don't see with a futuristic lens, you need to have somebody that does to help you think like that. Because it's just not gonna happen. Something for humor, like sarcasm, right? Sarcasm is a type of humor that is prevalent in our culture, and my heart hurts for people who don't like sarcasm and they're literal thinkers. Like it's so hard for them, and they feel like they don't fit in consequently. But I'm like, don't even try. I remember, Charles, can I rat you out?
Yeah. You've done it before.
So my Charles is a very literal guy, right? So sarcasm, he didn't even understand the concept. So when somebody would throw something out there sarcastically, he was like, wow, that was rude. And I'm like, oh, they're just joking around. And he was like, oh, that was brutal. So we were trying to, this is what sarcasm is. So we worked on it. And it took a couple of years, maybe, because he was young. So he was probably upper elementary, early middle school, trying to figure out this sarcasm thing. So of course, if anybody knows Hannah and my husband, so I can do sarcasm, but I don't like it. It's not my favorite, but it's part of our culture. But for Charles, it was just really difficult. So, and teasing happens in my family, my extended family, so poor Charles, right? So we would work on it. He's just joking, just let it ride, oh, this is a terrible joke. How does anybody like this, It just cut me down. So we were working on it, and we were at the grocery store, and we were being checked out, and the clerk that was checking us out said something sarcastically, and Charles says, oh, you think you're being funny. And I was like, you're being sarcastic. And she looked at me like, is this for real? What's happening? And I go, he is just learning about sarcasm, and he was able to identify sarcasm in your statement. And she was like, I didn't even know I was being sarcastic, but I guess I was, So, and it was kind of cool for Charles, because I was like, Charles, she doesn't even realize that she's using sarcasm because it's such a part of who she is. So it was helpful. It was a great illustration and learning opportunity. But so he would try to use sarcasm. Do you remember that, Charles? For that 1 year in middle school, I bet you he attempted it I don't know, for a couple of months, and everyone was so awkward around, because he would apply it and it didn't fit, and you're like, everybody was like, what just happened? And I was like, honey, not everybody needs to use sarcasm. I don't use it, don't use it. It's totally fine. You don't have to engage in it. You know, we're just trying to teach you how to identify it and not take it so personally or literally. So those are just some things. That's a talent. I don't know if I'd consider sarcasm talent, but making people laugh, you know, things like that. So certain things, and it's not worth trying, right? Like I was like, Charles, we could spend years trying to help you apply sarcasm. Do you really want to give all that energy and time to it? And no, I was like, good, me neither. Me neither. So another term is knowledge. It's simply what you know, and you can acquire knowledge through education or training. It could be factual knowledge. It could be experiential knowledge, you know, lots of things. So knowledge tells you how to deal with an upset customer, how to cope with job-related stress, what time weekend services are held at your church, so they can be basic facts, lots of different things. So all of that falls under knowledge. I think you guys are all pretty good with that. And then the other thing, so barrier label is what I wanted to talk about, and that was the airhead ding dong, right? So I was classified airhead ding dong for my positivity in high school and middle school. Obviously as a cheerleader, that just went with my personality. And so like, oh, there's ding dong cheerleader Kathy. So that was my barrier label. Hey, Evie. She's like, hi. Do you need something? No. Oh, okay, you're just waving. Everybody wave to Evie. Woo, I love you, Evie. Okay, so that was a hard one for me to get over. I really, and in fact, I have my master's degree in psychology, and I was actually gonna go on towards my doctorate until my husband said, I hate your school. I hate your school. You've been in school for 10 to 15 years. It was 7 years working towards ordination, my ministerial studies, and then 6 years, and he was just like, you always have homework. I hate it. And I go, you do? So all the way with my master's, I'm like, why didn't you say something sooner? So I said, it's not something that the Lord's leading me to. I don't need to work on my doctorate, but I can table it. If you hate it, let's table it. So that's what I did. But I really think that I learned a lot of things that I enjoy and I use in ministry. And it helped me too with working with students and for sure in my own family. God bless you. But part of it was proving to myself that I wasn't stupid. And if I got less than an A in my class, I took it so hard. Can you imagine me with algebra? It was such a brutal, it was brutal. And Bob, he's math-minded, so he had to tutor me. He took it worse than I did. You know, and he was every day working with me. And my son Nick, his high school buddies helping me. Miss Kathy, what's wrong with you? I don't know, my brain is broke. And so it was a lot of work. It took 2 of my son Nick's high school buddies and my husband to get me through algebra, and I got a low B, and it freaked me out. I thought, I am stupid. And but I wasn't. I just don't think that way. So part of that, I think, was just proving myself. And my son Nick, who is positivity, and we use barrier labels for him, don't we, Charles? Ding dong Nick, but I'm ding dong Kathy, so it's okay, Nick. So we talk about it very openly, but it's not aggressively. But he also has his master's, and he's a teacher, and he was a youth pastor, and a lot of it, I think, is just you're proving to yourself that those barrier labels are not who you are. And you know, I have my master's, and I still don't think I'm all that much. So if it's not gonna work. Don't look for the world to help you overcome your barrier labels. Only God can help you do that. The Clifton Strength Finders, which is the online instrument that measures the presence of talents in 34 categories called themes, that is the assessment that you guys took. It's called Clifton Strength Finders. A dominant talent is a way of thinking, feeling, or behaving that naturally appears frequently and powerfully. Often, this is number 1 or 2 on your strengths. So mine is definitely belief. Belief is my number one, and I don't think anything will ever change that. This is my principles, my values. If it doesn't align with what I believe in, yeah, it's not happening. I can't be a part of it, and I'm okay if everyone else, I'm like, if you wanna do it, it's totally fine, que sera, because I don't have responsibility. I don't feel responsible for, what you do with your life. I'm a big fan of free will. It came from God, and everyone, I'm like, you get free will, and you get free will, and you get free will. Have at it. Work things out your own way with God, but if it goes against what I believe, you're not gonna find it in my world. Charles, your belief in restorative, he's got restorative and belief as one restorative, two belief. I'm gonna push back on that because I think your belief is your dominant. Would you say, Charles?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, if he doesn't believe it's got to. So Charles doesn't want anything, he doesn't even like to joke around about alcohol. And he was at the movie theater and he ordered, it was when Olathe, the dine-in or whatever, you could order drinks and food and they would bring it to you. And it was dark when they came and took his order, and so he whispered the order and she came out. This is secondhand story, Hannah told me because I wasn't with the kids. Brought out a drink and it had an umbrella in it. And Hannah's looking at it like, they just gave my brother an alcoholic drink, knowing Charles would lose his mind if he knew, right? So she was in this dilemma, the devil and the angel. Should I let him? So she leaned over and was like, Charles, did you order an alcoholic drink? And he was like, no, I ordered a Mellow Yellow. And she's like, well, that umbrella means alcohol. She goes, Charles literally got up like it bit him and started walking out right away. I don't even want it anywhere near me. I don't want anybody to think I'm associated with alcohol. Like, get it away. So that's he's probably more belief than me, and I'm pretty close to that. So belief is my dominant talent. So you can look at your strengths and probably see, oh, this is definitely number one. Everything else works around this. So if my positivity, there's no way I can say, well, it'll be okay. Nope, that's not gonna happen because my belief will trump it. That is the trump card in my deck, belief. So that's what a dominant talent is. A supporting talent is some of the other things that help you accomplish what you're supposed to do. They're not as natural, but you can still, they'll help you accomplish whatever your mission is according to your strengths. Theme, a category of talents. Themes help you begin to discover and talk about your greatest talents. Decades of research into talents and success have shown that the talents most related to potential for success can be grouped into 34 themes. So these are your themes. So I look at mine and go, yep, these are always at play in whatever I do. I can't get away from it. It's just, and I certainly don't think that this is the have-all, be-all. I mean, I've looked at other people's strengths and wanted many others besides what I have. So I'm open to people saying, Kathy, why don't you just do it this way? I'm open to that. But sometimes the effort to do it that way is so against what I naturally do that sometimes I'm just like, I just don't have it in me. It's so much effort to do it using strengths that I don't have. So it's not resistance so much to change as much as it is like, I need to weigh, is it worth the effort? So something that I see with people, especially in college, right? Like, college gives a module, this is the module, in school, high school, it doesn't matter, right? Like, wherever you go, there's these modules, this is how you accomplish these things. These are the objectives, these are the tools that we give you to meet those objectives. And those things don't work for everybody. They just don't. In the educational world, they have IEPs, Individual Education Plan, right? And that's because not everybody fits. It doesn't work for everybody. And so when people are forced to do something that doesn't come naturally, it can be a motivational piece, like it can drive them to achieve if they're an achiever, let's say, but it can also really be destructive for some other people. Like, because they will just be like, I can't do it because I guess I'm a loser, you know? I mean, I just accept that. I'm like, yep, I'm a loser, I can't do it. I can, but it's too much for me. I don't even wanna deal with it. It's too much weight, too much work, you know? So I think, you know, what I love about Strengths is it helps people put together an ISP, an individual spiritual plan. Accomplish what God has called you to accomplish using the things that He gave you to do it. He did it on purpose. He gave me these things to accomplish what He called me to. And nobody can do what Kathy was created to do. Nobody. There's nobody on this planet. And it's the same for you. Nobody is called to do in the kingdom of God what you were created to do. And God gave you all of the things that you need to fulfill that calling. So don't beat yourself up too bad if you're like, I just don't know why I can't think like that. I can't be like that. You know, it's okay, you're not supposed to. And don't spend a lot of energy and time on trying to be somebody you're not. Okay, so if you would, go ahead and pull out the Clifton Strengths Finder Quick Reference Card, front and back, okay? So we're going to review these, and I want you to think about, while we're looking at these strengths, think about them and how they manifest in you. They sometimes relate in the way you relate with people. Sometimes you can see them in the way you relate with tasks or projects. Sometimes it's both. It can be either or both, okay? So the first one is achiever. Do we have any achievers here? Achievers? Woo, that's me. Good job, guys. Okay, so achievers, they make me look so bad. Oh, they make me look so bad. But, I mean, I'm so grateful because they inspire me, they push me. They really do. Okay, so achievers are especially talented in the people. What's that? Sorry, here we go. No, oh man, well, it's a high bar. It's just tough. So achiever people have a great deal of stamina and they work hard. They take great satisfaction from being busy and productive. I'm an arranger, so that can mirror that sometimes. Plus I'm a spaz, that has nothing to do, that's not a strength. I'm just a spaz, I have ADHD. You know, my mom was on asthma medication when she was pregnant with me, which was speed, so here I am. That was before they knew that stuff was bad. So, too late, here I am. So, people go, oh, aren't you an achiever? I go, no, I'm just a spaz, but things are thinking of me like that. And we'll talk to you a little bit about the achiever in the balcony and the achiever in the basement in just a little bit, okay? So, activator. People in the activator theme, they can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. These are people that are often impatient, okay? So if you have activator, you're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. So I look like an activator too, right? That's my spaz. But, yeah, it's totally all spaz. My brother is an activator. So activators, they don't think about the different alternative options. They don't think about the consequences. They're just like, let's move it, let's go, we gotta get it done. And then they deal with the consequences of their fast actions. If it's in the basement, okay? Hopefully it's in the balcony, because that's where God wants it. We need activators, because deliberative, strategic, and analytical people can actually become paralyzed, right? So we need those activators, we really do. Adaptability, people with adaptability, they're kind of like go with the flow. They tend to be the now people who take things as they come, and they discover the future one day at a time. So they're not very futuristic, they're often not planners. So anybody here who is adaptability? It's nice. Yeah. I mean, they're easygoing, they're usually pretty easy to work with. Nate and Nick, our pastors Nate and Nick are both adaptability. Yeah. So that's pretty, I mean here, right, hey, Nate, you've never been a children's pastor before. Come on, you can do it. He's like, oh, okay. Sure, I'll go with the flow, got it. You know, so adaptability, it's wonderful. They're pretty easy to be around and work with. Analytical people, oh, I need you so desperately in my life, these analytical people, right? So analytical people are especially talented for reasons, they search for reasons and causes. They need to know that, their mind thinks that way. They have the ability to think about all the factors that might affect a situation. I don't think like that. I've developed some of those abilities, and some of that as a skill because I've had to, but it does not come easy to me. So I'm grateful for the analytical people. My nephew, Adam, bless his heart, he's strategic, deliberative, and analytical. Do you know how hard it is for him to do anything? Oh, it's so hard for him to move every day. He's like, he thinks about everything all the time, you know? So I'm like, this poor guy, so many thoughts. They're in their head a lot about every little thing. So I would be overwhelmed. Arranger, people who are arrangers, they can organize, but they also have a flexibility that complements this ability. So arranger is in my top 10. I know people look at my office and they go, no way are you organized. but it's all organized mess. So have a process. So they like to figure out how all of the pieces and resources can be arranged for maximum productivity. So they're always shuffling things around. They can manage schedules like crazy people. So my arranger, I was the family scheduler. So 4 kids, working 2 jobs, going to school full time. Bob worked, so he volunteered. And so I was the one who managed all we had therapy for, I don't even know how long, decades of therapy. So we had, 4 days a week, somebody was going to therapy. So I pulled my mom and dad in, and they helped. And I was like, okay, you be here, you be here, you be here, you be there. Got it. So that was my arranger. So probably would have been, had that been in my life when I took this exam, it probably would have been maybe number 5. So, because they'll shift places, your top 10 by a couple positions, depending on what your situation is. And I did want to, Lauren asked me on the break, she was like, so where did these come from? Where, these, she had, what were they, I don't know, she had 5 strengths. And I was like, well, I was in the church strengths grid, so I looked at it and I was like, well, it would have been like 10 years ago. She's like, well, probably life was crazy then or whatever. So if you are early when you take this test, it can be very different. As I said, when you become a teenager, you're kind of discovering who you are. So if you take it as a teenager, you can 10 years later be somebody totally different than you were as a teenager. So it's worth your while to retake it, unless you look at them and go, oh yeah, this is definitely me. Troy was gonna retake it because he took it as a teenager. And we had a problem, a technology problem, right? So we were looking at it, I go, well, let me see what you already know, and I was like, well, does this sound like you? Because it sounded like, to me, I was like, this sounds like Troy. And he was like, yeah, I think it does. I was like, I think this is still pretty good. So if you did yours and you're looking at them because you didn't redo it, and you're looking at it going, that does not sound like me, then see me, and you need to retake it. Trauma can also change your core. Trauma can do that. A lot of loss. So people who have a ton of loss, grief can also change you, which translates to trauma. Even though you might not identify it as trauma, it really is to your core. So people who have a lot of death in their family. So they're trying to figure out who they are, so it changes them. Okay, so I'm sorry, I derailed, but I wanted to bring that up, especially if we're going through these and you're like, this doesn't sound like me. Okay, next is belief. People who have the belief theme, they have certain core values that are unchanging. Out of these values emerges a defined purpose for their life. Everything they do is driven by their belief. Command. People especially talented in command theme, they have presence. They can take control of a situation and make decisions. If you're in an ER, hopefully you have somebody with command. Because the last thing you want is a whole bunch of adaptability people that are like, I don't know, or analytical people going, well, let's look at all the possibilities. You're like, heart attack, right here, right here, right? So nurses you can identify, right? Like, you really need somebody with command, somebody, a charge nurse, somebody needs to make a decision. And those are the people that are like, commanders in the Army, hey, this is what we're dealing with. So people who have to make critical decisions under pressure, we need people with command there. Communication. These are people that can generally find it easy to put their thoughts into words. They're good conversationalists, they're good speakers, things like that. Believe it or not, well, maybe you guys are like, yeah, you stink at communication. It is not. People are like, oh, you must be in communication. And I'm like, no, I'm not. It's not even in my top 10. I've had to develop some skills because of my calling, but it doesn't come naturally. It's actually a lot of work for me, especially with my input. It's challenging for me. So competition, people especially talented in the composition, they measure their progress against the performance of others. So I know it's so sad because I've heard pastors who have competition and they're like, oh, that's terrible. I'm a terrible pastor. I'm competitive. And I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong. Like, that's a strength because they are inspired and motivated. They are driven because of that competitive nature. So if you are competitive, don't be down on yourself. Like, it's a motivational thing. Do we have any competition here? Did anybody? Is there no, it is not a common one. Nobody, we have nobody in here. Yeah, so that's interesting. Command is not very common either. Does anybody here have command? No, we're in trouble. We're all gonna die. There's a serious crisis. Yep, we're dead. So yeah, I mean, those are really uncommon and we really need them. Like, when you need them, you need them. So celebrate the people that have those strengths because they're not real common. Connectedness. People with connectedness, they have faith in the links between all things. They believe there are few coincidences and that almost every event has a reason. So partner that with my positivity, right? La que sera, sera. So it's really helped me through some really tragic things. So I'm grateful for it because otherwise I could have really fallen to pieces. Bad things happen. I don't know. If I was strategic and analytical and deliberative with all of the tragedies that I've had, I'd be like, oh, I never got up off the ground again. She's just been in a puddle ever since. So I'm grateful for my connectedness because I believe, here's my belief, I believe it has purpose and it'll work out. Context. People with context enjoy thinking about the past. They understand the present by researching its history. So if you try to throw out a tradition to someone who has context, it could really rock them hardcore. Like it could rock them to the core. So they resist, it presents as change resistance. So I'm gonna throw Devon under the bus because she's over there in context. It will look like she's change resistant. She is not. I'm so proud of her because she's not. She knows change is life, and change is hard for people with context. Really hard. Really, really hard. But she's like, no, as soon as I get context, but give me a minute, let me catch my breath. I have to put it in perspective, and then I'm moving forward. So when somebody comes to you and they're resistant about changing a tradition, well, these are the things we've always done, right? Be gracious and know it's part of their identity that you're like rattling, you know, and so that's where it's coming from. So we need those people though, honestly and truly. Like someone asked, I don't even know what the context was of this discussion this week somewhere, but why do we need to remember history? Like, because it keeps us mindful. This is why we're in this Israelite pattern of the Israelites, they were always, they let pagans in, they started worshiping false gods, life was a mess for hundreds or 200 years, and then again, okay, and it's because the oral tradition wasn't passed on, they lost history, they lost context. Hey Charles, can you text your dad for me, please? And tell him, yeah, he forgot. He's gone, unless it's a problem. We had some flooding, so I'm like, what if it's an emergency? And I'm just like, oh.
That's him right now.
Okay, there he is. He's like, it could be an issue. So, I don't know. I didn't hear from all of the family with the storms today, but most of them I was in contact with this morning. So, his sister is married to my cousin, and they were right in the midst, and I hadn't heard from them. So, okay, so, context. Oh, we missed, I'm gonna come back to consistency because that's Charles. Anybody here consistency? Consistency. Yeah, Lawrence, consistency, yeah, huge. Linda, your consistency. Consistency, Charles it's not on his top 5. I thought it was, it must be in his top 10. Charles, is your consistency in your top 10?
Let me check.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, he's at home, he forgot.
Oh, perfect, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's in my top 10.
I figured, okay, yeah, I was like, I know Charles is. So, consistent people, they are keenly aware of the need to treat people the same. They are all about fairness. That's a big deal for consistency people. They keep us accountable on that. And they try to treat everyone in the world with consistency. They like rules. They like procedures. They like, this is the way it is. Sometimes, so if they're not rule keepers, because it doesn't always play out like that, but if they're not rule followers, rule keepers, they like things the same. So they like the expectations to be identified, and we need to do that. So Charles, when he was younger, poor guy, like his therapist would be like, yeah, he needs consistency. And I was like, so we're in ministry. Life's gonna be really hard for this kid. Because there's flexibility, it's just every day. We don't know what's gonna happen. That's just our life. And so poor Charles, his brain was in overload for so many years. And so we made a list of him, like, this is what's happening every day. He liked agendas, he liked plans, he liked charts. But I was like, but you have to flex, and I'll give you as much notice as possible. whenever there's a change. So his teachers knew it, he had the schedule of the day on his desk. If there was a change, a drill or something, as soon as he arrived, they'd say, hey, there's a change in your schedule, I put it on there, and then he could process and adapt. So you can develop some adaptability if you're consistency. It takes effort, but one of the great things about consistency is it forces us to be mindful of identified expectations. That helps everybody, right? Like, it's just helpful, even in a relationship. It's just helpful. And they also, they want everybody to be treated fair, and they treat people fair. They tend to be, they're just equalizers, and it's wonderful, the consistency. Deliberative. People with deliberative, they are best described by the serious care they take in making decisions or choices. They anticipate the obstacles. Anybody here deliberative? Okay, so we're going to talk about it in the basement because you see the obstacles. You're like, it's like bumper cars. Whoop, can't go there. Whoop, let's not do that. Whoop, So that's what happened. You're like, this could be a terrible thing. This could be a terrible thing. This could be a terrible thing. And your activator's like, who cares? Just move it. Let's go. So they're like, what? We're all gonna die. I don't have deliberative, and I need that. So we have some deliberative people in my house, and I'm grateful for that because I'm like, hey, you need some help here, and they identify those obstacles for me like this. Did you think about this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I didn't think about that at all. That's why I'm here talking to you. Developer, they recognize and cultivate the potential in others. They spot the signs of each small improvement and derive satisfaction from these improvements. To be a developer. It's not, I do have developer, I work with people, I develop people quite a bit, that's part of my calling, so I had to. So it is, I don't remember where it falls in there, I have it, it's like above my 10, maybe 11 or 12 or whatever, but developers really move things along. They really do. They just bring out the potential in circumstances. So maybe they're developer of projects. It might not be developer of people. It can be a developer of projects. Developers of people, they bring out the potential in others and they celebrate. Like that's what I'm working with these people that I've met online, and this poor guy, he's just trauma and he's been in paralysis, so he's strategic, and trauma can keep you paralyzed too, so he just has a hard time doing anything. Like he's like, I don't even shower for days, just getting out of bed. I don't even, the poor guy doesn't even want to live, he's overwhelmed, and I'm like, so I've been working with him for 2 weeks, and yesterday he was like, okay, so I filled out this job application, I did the strengths assessment, I did, and he's like, and, I just can't do this one other thing, I have to apply, but I just can't, I know, I'm just so frustrating, I'm frustrated with myself. I was like, buddy, you did so much today. And he was like, what? And I was like, did you shower? You showered, you filled out a job application, you did the strengths assessment, are you kidding me? Come on, you haven't been able to do that in like 2 years. And he was just like, oh, thank you. All he could see was what he didn't, get done. So those developers are necessary because they help motivate others. So we need developers. Discipline, they enjoy routine and structure. So if you're disciplined, that is super important for you. Your world is best described by the order they create. Okay, so they cannot handle chaos. That just can't do it. They gotta have, and discipline will sometimes mirror consistency. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And sometimes it could be that the order they create is in the people they surround themselves with. So maybe it's not task, so keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be task and people, it can be one or the other. People who are disciplined, they often will have smaller circles because they can organize that better. Their people circles are often smaller. Not always, but generally. I mean, unless they've got a ranger or some other things like empathy. Empathy, oh, you guys with empathy. Who's got empathy? Man, that's tough. I'm compassionate, but I don't have empathy. Empathy, and we'll talk about that in the basement because empathy, they sense the feelings of other people by imagining themselves in others' lives or others' situations. I can be empathetic, but I have to really be immersed in stuff. But people with empathy, like, they're driving by a crash, and you're like, why are these people, bottlenecking or whatever, and it's because, like, they're like, oh, we need to pray, what's happening with those people over there? Like, right? Like, this is in their heart, and, like, they're thinking about it. Some people, it's like that night, they're thinking about it. It is on them, and it's just hard. Like, but it's a gift. Because they can identify with other people's situations and circumstances. So they think about other people's feelings a lot. They so much so sometimes in the balcony, they can't get past it. Like, can you imagine if you were empathizing with everybody in this room? I don't even know how you could move. There's a lot of things going on in this room and all the feelings with it. Whew. So empathy, but we need people who can empathize, for sure. We need those empathy people. They just love others well and think about others well. Focus. That's definitely not me. Amen. They take a direction and they follow through and they make the corrections necessary to stay on track. They prioritize and then they act. Focus. What's one of our favorite? There's not a lot of focus. Charles is probably the most focused person in our house. Would you say so, Charles?
Yeah, it's number 16.
For you?
So.
Yeah, it's probably like 30 for me and everyone else in the house. It's terrible. We can be like, oh, it's really brutal not to have focus. So I really need people. One of our famous.
My consistency looks like focus.
That's true. Yeah, your consistency. But you still have focus too. He can focus. Hannah's always saying to me, focus up, Michael Bolton, focus up. I'm like, I'm trying. Futuristic. People with futuristic theme, they're inspired by the future and what could be. They inspire others with their visions of the future. Okay, so this can also, ideation can also mirror futuristic, but there's a clear difference. So people who are futuristic, they see ahead. They have to have that plan. Ideators don't have to have an end game in mind, but people with futuristic, they often do. Is anybody here futuristic? Nice. Very good, cool. That's not as common, not as uncommon as command and the other one, which we talked about, command and what was that other one? Competitive, yeah. Those are the most rarest, but focus, but futuristic is on there too. Harmony, harmony people. They look for consensus. They don't enjoy conflict. Rather, they're always needing to be affirmed or they need agreement. Like they can't stand when people aren't on board. How many harmony people are here? Harmony. Lots of harmony, right? Hate. Do you guys hate conflict?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you have harmony and you like conflict or conflict resolution.
No, we're talking about you.
Yeah, it's so rare. It's so rare. Did you need something, Banana? Oh. Okay. Sorry. You're running my business. I don't have any focus. Okay, so yeah, harmony, that's brutal for you guys, like, I'm so glad I don't have harmony. If I ever had it, my mom and dad squished it out of me. They were like, nope, you cannot worry about people who don't approve of you. Move on. It's their loss, just move on. You know, so I'm grateful. But people with harmony, like, that's just tough for them. Like, won't you, come on board, come join us. If you have harmony includer, oh my word. Does anybody here have harmony and includer? Oh, that's a mercy. Whew, that's just brutal, man. Okay, so our people with harmony, like, they will work so hard for agreement, and I love that. Like, they consider others. If they don't, hopefully they don't have empathy too. Anybody here have harmony and empathy? Oh, I'm so sorry. That is brutal. That's tough. Because, are you harmony and empathy, Gwen? Oh, that is brutal. But I'll tell you what, they will work. Finally, somebody called it. I mean, they will work so hard because they're feeling other people, they're empathetic, and you don't agree with this. I mean, they will stop their world for a decade to make you feel okay. Yeah. You know, it's amazing. They're sensitive. Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's a hard one to carry. I'm thankful for it. We need people like that. So, but it is not easy to have those two. Ideation. These are people that are fascinated by ideas. They're able to find connections between seemingly disparate phenomena. So, it's amazing. Ideators. Anybody here ideation? I know Josh is an ideator. I called that way before you. I was like, you are an ideator. You got an ideation? Okay, so ideators, they generate ideas that, like a mad person. Like all the time. These ideas are just in their head. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this.
Yep.
And I'm like, holy cow! Right? Because I have input. I don't have deliberation or analytical, deliberative, or strategic, right? But I have input. So I'm taking all of these things that go with every one of those ideas. And of course, I told you I will gather things and I will have, 50 hours worth of stuff for 45 minutes. And so every idea thrown at me generates all of this input, this information gathering. And I'm like, oh, that was 4 ideas. I'll be here for 2 months. And they're like, I do 4 ideas a second. I'm like, what? So they can be, like for me, and people with context, right? Like, it's exhausting.
Yes.
It is exhausting, right?
Yes.
I have some good ideas. I'm not saying I don't have good ideas, but I am not a person who's just constantly coming up with ideas, right? Like I'm spending time in prayer, the Lord is talking to my heart. Ideation just comes naturally with these people. So I will go to, Josh, I can say, okay, here's what we need. And he's like, I got this idea, how about this, how about this, how about this? Oh, beautiful, I knew you'd have some ideas. Great. Leah White, she's not here, Leah Yates, sorry, she's married. She's an ideator. She is an ideator, so she'll generate 50,000 ideas a second. And she isn't, she's not as tied, I don't know what she hasn't sent me her results, but, and I don't know for sure she's an ideator, but I'm sure. So, but she's not, her other strengths don't commit her to it. So she's probably not context because if she gave you 1,000 ideas and you scrapped every one of them, she'd be like, okay, we're moving on. I'm like, wow, that would have taken me 4 years. And she's just moving on. So ideators are behind innovation. They make things happen. They are changers, world changers, world shakers. For those who have context, yeah, put those two together. The ideator with the traditionalist. Woo, that's crazy, right? So you have to know, it's so helpful to know your team and your family and where it's coming from and talk about it, right? So I'm so thankful, we're all thankful for ideation because Intellection and ideation is where we get a lot of our inventions, which I'm thankful we're sitting here in electricity out there. Includer, I'm an includer. They are accepting of others. They show awareness of those who feel left out, and they make an effort to include them. Tom Craig, I'm an includer too. Tom Craig was an includer. Can you guys see that? If you knew Tom, you know, right? He's an includer. Yeah. I'm an includer too. Probably not as high up. Where's mine? Mine's 4. Tom's was probably like 1 or 2, right?
Sure.
Like, yeah. I mean, you know, he's like, oh, there's a man 6 miles down the road. I'm gonna go get him. Let's go. Come on, let's go include him in whatever. We're having dinner at the church. Come on. You know that. I mean, so they just can't not include other people. They lose sleep about it. Like they want everyone to be involved, and so I will go out of my way to include people. I want everybody to have an opportunity, but I'm also okay, and that's the free will thing, right? It's okay. I'm okay if you don't want to either, but I've given you the opportunity, the option, and if you opt out, that's cool too. I'm okay with that. Let's see, individualization. People with this theme, they're intrigued with the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how who people are and how they're different, and they can work together productively. So they're very much like strengths would definitely be something that would help them in who they are, right? So they're gonna be like, yes, yes, yes. Strengths is everything this world needs, right? So that's somebody with individualization. Input, they have a craving to know more. They often like to collect and archive all kinds of information. It mirrors with learner. It can mirror with context, but the purpose behind the gathering of information is very different between all 3 of those. But I'm always looking for more. I just don't hold as much in my brain as I used to. Intellection, people who have intellection, they are characterized by their intellectual activity. They're introspective and they appreciate intellection discussions. So they are often wanting to have theological discussions for like, if you know Jake Colahan, right, Pastor Jake? Oh, yeah. He's an election. He loves it. It inspires him. It's stimulating him. He needs that. If he doesn't have that kind of thought-provoking discussion in his life, yeah, he's a sad guy. So intellection people, they love ideas. They spend a lot of time in their head. Learners, they have a great desire to learn and they want to continuously improve. In particular, the process of learning is what excites them. So not necessarily, so if you're working towards a degree, right? The degree isn't what they're going for. I mean, yes, that's part of it, but they love the process. They love the information. So that's what it's about for the learner. The maximizer, these are people who focus on, their focus is a way that they stimulate personal and group excellence. They seek to transform something strong into something superb. So the maximizer, and I need maximizers in my life because I can come into a situation and this is because this was something that was developed, my adaptability, because my husband and I are total opposites. And he is, I used to be very organized. My mom and dad were both maximizers. Everything had its place. Everything had to be a certain way. And they saw, if they walked into a room and there was a crumb, we can't go anywhere until this crumb is picked up. Like, it just looks a mess. Like, in their mind, they can't get past that. So my uncle was a maximizer. He was up vacuuming the stairs in the middle of the night when company was coming because he was like, oh my word, something's out of place, this can't happen, right? So that's in the balcony because then it controls them. But the maximizer, when it's, or in the basement, when it's in the balcony, it's helping make everything the best it can be. So my mom, she was always pushing me to do more. You can be better, you can do the best, you can be the best, So Maximizers really focus on that, and that's super helpful because I am like, whatever, it's okay, I don't, people are like, it's not okay, it's a mess, so Maximizer will come in and help me and fix that. Positivity. People with positivity have enthusiasm. That's contagious. That's probably what you see in me, Shelley. That's what it is. It's my positivity. They are upbeat and they can get others excited about what they're going to do. So, cheerleader Kathy, right? So positivity, we can just see things. Who's got positivity? Bo? Ethan? It's so nice. Yep, great. I'll tell you what, when you got positivity, yeah. When there's a disaster, which I hear from you, I hear like, oh yeah, we can do that. Because I will bring my problems to Josh and go, here's these problems, how can we fix it? He's like, oh yeah, we can fix it. And to me, it's overwhelming. And he's like, no, it's easy, blah, 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 blah. So I appreciate that. And I have positivity, but especially when it's tech related, I have no answer. Relator. These people enjoy close relationships with others, and they find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. So relators are people who do well in a collaborative environment. Am I a relator? No. I think it's up there, but it's not in my top 5. But relators, they, and it might not be a big team. It doesn't have to be a big team. It can be a small team. But it's just that I'm relating with others. These ideas relate. Connectedness can sometimes mirror a little bit as relator, but they're very different. Okay, responsibility. These people take psychological ownership of what they say they will do. They are committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty. So Pastor Dave has responsibility. And so if you've ever seen Dave, right? So if someone comes in and they've got, not that this ever happens in church, so this must be a hypothetical. So if someone's like, this is horrible, why do we do this, right? Dave's responsibility will kick in because he feels responsible for that. Like, oh, I'm responsible for this. And so then he has to somehow disconnect from that ownership. Or, he can't just, so he has to say, okay, let's find out where the connection is, because that's the responsible piece, right? So that's his responsibility that you'll see working when somebody brings something to him, that responsibility kicks in. And he'll be thinking about it. Like, he'll think about it and then he'll come back to it and he's like, okay, somebody said this and let's talk about this, and because he feels responsible very much so. People with responsibility, if they're connected even in the slightest way to something, they feel very responsible for its outcome and everyone's experience with it. So it can be very overwhelming. Anybody here with responsibility? Right? Exhausting, isn't it? I don't have it, it's okay. I'm like, oh, that's not my problem, it should be yours either. Restorative and responsibility can kind of mirror each other. Restorative people, they are adept at dealing with problems. They're good at figuring out what is wrong and resolving it. Charles is restorative. Dave is also restorative, so pray for him. He's restorative and responsibility, that's a lot. But I will say to Charles, I'll say, I have this problem, and with the chicken coop, and he's also innovative. So he'll think about it, and he'll come back and say, I have these ideas, and he'll have drawings, and it's great. So, but he is a problem solver, and I'm so grateful for that. We need problem solvers. The world is getting worse. We need everybody on board that is one. Self-assurance. These people feel confident in their ability to manage their own lives. They possess an inner compass that gives them confidence that their decisions are right. Anybody here have self-assurance? That's another not so common one. Okay, so self-assurance people, if you try to provide, constructive feedback on something, they're really confident in the decisions they made. They didn't, just like positivity, just be like, whatever, kiss the rats around. No, they knew what they were doing, they made the decision, it was intentional, and they're real confident in it. And so sometimes in the basement, it'll be stubborn, but in the balcony, it's determination, it's no, I've really thought about these things. So they're pretty, even though they might not have deliberative, they know what they're doing. So you might have some headbutting with somebody who's self-assurance if you're trying to get them to change a decision of theirs. Significance, these people, they want to be very important in the eyes of others. They are independent and want to be recognized. So the way that's worded can sound vain, but that's not what it's rooted in at all. It's not vanity, it's affirmation, right? So that's important to them. Like people who have significance, does anybody here have significance? Okay, so it's not a real common one, but people with significance, so tell me if this is you. So you're not like, oh, I need everybody to put my picture on a wall and have my bust on their table, right? Like that's not what it's about, right? I want to make sure that it's okay in your eyes, that does that sound like significance, yep. Right? Okay, so the way it's worded sounds kind of wonky, but that's how it is. They want to make sure that everybody around them, they're getting affirmed, like, oh yeah, that's the right way, I'm on board, let's go. Kind of like mirrored to harmony, but not quite harmony, if that makes sense. Okay, but if they don't have that, like they're not the person who's going to be like, okay, so there's a team of 100 of us and 99 did not agree with my decision, it's okay. Is that you? Yeah, are you like that or no? You're like, no, I really want somebody on board with me.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, somebody needs to be on board because I'm gonna second guess my decision, right? So that's where that's coming from. In the balcony, it can be paralyzing because if the 99 people, if one of them isn't affirming, then you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't move forward, or maybe we shouldn't go that way. So that's significance is that can be a tough one, especially if it's in your top two. If it's your dominant theme, where is it on yours?
Number 1.
Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. That's tough. So you and I might need to talk. No, we'll talk about some ways too. You just make sure that it's in the balcony or it will drag you down. It'll be heavy, and we don't want that. That's not what God wants. Okay? So strategic. People with the strategic theme, they're always looking at alternative ways to move forward. So faced with any given scenario, they're quickly to spot lots of relevant patterns and issues. So people with strategic minds, they're like, so they have 50 different ways to get to the end result, right? So we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, but we're all heading towards this. Anybody here strategic? Does that sound correct for everyone that's strategic?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Strategic minds can also be overwhelmed because they do see so many paths. So they're like, which one do we go with? There's 85, and then you can only pick out one. So that can be overwhelming for a strategic mind. I need strategic people because I don't think like that. Can you imagine I can get with my input? Oh, I'm so glad I don't have strategic with my input. People with woo, they love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making a connection with another person. So people with woo, they cannot stand to see somebody isolated. Bo, are you an includer too?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. So if you're on the wall, Bowen's coming over you with his sack, come on, let's go. Because it's gonna drive him crazy that you're not engaged. So he wants to make that connection. It's funny because I don't know how Woo got a bad rap, and maybe it's the basement, right? But I don't see a whole lot of people in the church environment using Woo in a bad way. I mean, Woo is wonderful. I wish we had more Woo in the church because they are connecting with people. They might not be the person to follow through, right? To make sure let me get you connected with this small group. Let me make sure you're attending that small group. You know, they're just looking right there. I want to make a connection. Come on. And then the other people who are more deliberative, who are includers, they'll be the ones that follow through on that. So those are all the strengths, 34. So now you guys know all of those strengths. I'm gonna ask you to think about, just right now tonight, I'm gonna throw out some nouns that are used to describe people with these particular strengths, okay? One of these nouns should describe you if you have this strength. If none of them describe you, then you and I should talk about your assessment, okay? Because it gives lots of, at least one, maybe all of them. You might go, every single one of them, nailed it, but at least one. Okay, so achievers. They are often laborers, workers, producers, doers, completers, and finishers. Those are all words for achiever. Activators. They are catalysts, initiators, instigators, starters, originators, influencer. Adaptability. First responder, early adopter, accommodator, follower. Analytical people, scientist, measurer, data-driven, fact finder or a fact user, observer. If you are an arranger, you might be a juggler, an orchestrator, coordinator, rearranger, multi-thinker, controller, and lister. Belief, people with belief might be called missionary, value-driven, others-oriented, family-driven, faith-driven, contributor, believer. If you're looking at those, maybe circle what describes you. Just put a circle over yours. Nobody had command, but we're gonna go that, we'll review it in case you have somebody command in your family or on one of your teams. Decider, controller, leader, driver, clarifier, persuader, fighter, challenger, intimidator. Communication, talker, presenter, conversationalist, storyteller, verbal processor, explainer, writer. Any questions so far? Has anybody had one of their strengths identified by nouns and not had a correlating noun? Okay, good. Competition, winner, scorekeeper, comparer, measurer. Connectedness, integrator, bridge builder, an environmentalist, humanitarian, communitarian, a unifier, a social advocate, seeker. Consistency, standardizer, rule enforcer, systemizer, and referee. Oh, poor Charles, I was just thinking. My Charles was, since he was such a rule person, that consistency, his older brother, he hated this. I was like, okay, Nick can't be trusted, he's going on a date, go with him. Because if Nick broke any rule, I got a phone call. Nick is going 2 miles over the speed limit. But everything was rule. Context. People with context are often historians, they're framers, recorders, archaeologists, genealogists. Deliberative, risk assessors, preventors, and guardian. Developers, they are investors, coaches, mentors, teachers, encouragers, stretchers. Stretcher in context of they're challenging you to grow. That's what they're stretching you. Discipline, organizer, planner, self-controller, architect, structure. Empathy, feeler, a sensor, expressor, sage, intuitor, absorber, listener, and resonator. Focus. People with focus are often called concentrators, prioritizers, rudders, because they guide things, guide or director. Futuristic, forecaster, visionary, dreamer, predictor, imaginer, and anticipator. Harmony, mediator, negotiator, arbitrator, ombudsman, ambassador, diplomat, pragmatist, peacemaker. Ideation, inventor, creator, designer, artist, innovator, brainstormer, novelist. Includers, acceptor, tolerator, inviter, welcomer, assimilator, barrier buster. Individualization, customizer, observer, acceptor, noticer, spotter, anthropologist, novelist, biographer. Input is an archivist, a librarian, a collector, an absorber, a curator, a resource sourcer, and a circulator. Intellection, thinker, philosopher, discusser, muser, loner, writer, blogger. Learners, student, explorer, discoverer, self-helper, continuous improver, expert. A maximizer, a decider, a controller, a leader, a driver, clarifier, persuader, fighter, challenger, demander, perfectionist, quality controller. Positivity, energizer, optimist, encourager, influencer, comedian, performer, celebrator, recognizer, enthusiast, and promoter. Relator, friend, family member, loyalist, intimatizer, carer, risk taker. Responsibility, owner, loyalist, servant, responder, perfectionist, judge, volunteer, controller. People with restorative are called fixers, diagnosers, troubleshooter, investigator, rehabilitator, resuscitator. Self-assurance, influencer, controller, director, decider, and risk taker. Significance, reacher, performer, seeker, yearner, star, craver, desirer, claimer. Strategic, selector, thinker, strategist, culler, sorter, evaluator, mapper, router, planner. Woo, socializer, charmer, conversationalist, greeter, engager, initiator, networker, and prospector. Okay, did anybody say, well, none of these really fit me in the category? Anybody? Okay. That's good, all right. Any questions on any of those things? Okay, well, guys, we covered a lot. We can do balcony basement a little bit. I don't know if we'll get through all of it. We can work on, I kind of want to cover what I can. I think we'll cover what we can, and we'll in 10 minutes, and then we'll close with some observation homework for you guys. Okay, so you want to pull out your balcony and your basement with this strength characteristics right here. Okay, so if you're an achiever, that's an executing domain in your brain function, right? So that's an action, an executor. Achiever, if you're using it in the balcony, then you are tireless, you have a strong work ethic, you lead by example, you're a go-getter, and you're hungry. Not like I haven't had dinner hungry, but hungry for more, yeah. If it's in the basement, it is unbalanced, brown noser, overcommitted, can't say no, burning the candle at both ends, too concentrated at work. On work. If you're activator, this is an influencing domain, so you influence others. If it's in the balcony, you're a self-starter, you're a fire starter, you're an energy source, and you're fearless. If it's in the basement, it's ready, aim, fire. You're a loose cannon. You're just making decisions, not really thinking about it. You speak before you think. You're in left field because others have not caught up. Adaptability. This is in the relationship domain. In the balcony, it's flexible, comfortable in times of change, you're easy to get along with, and you go with the flow. If it's in the basement, you're directionless, you're indecisive, you're a sheep, you're inconclusive or whimsical. So my Tori, we called her our floater, because she would just float around and be like, oh, the whole day went by? Like, wow. So she would lose days, hours, it was just crazy, but that was adaptability in the basement. She was not great at keeping time or, tracking that at all. Analytical, that is a strategic thinking domain. So you're in your brain a lot. Thinking, there's a lot of thinking that happens with analyticals. In the balcony, you're well thought out, you're logical, you're deep, you're thorough, you're comfortable with numbers, figures, and charts. You're smart. If it's in the basement, you can be viewed as rude, short, tough, never satisfied with the answer, too many questions. Arranger is an executing domain, and if it's in the balcony, it's flexible organizer juggler, aligning and realigning tasks to find the most productive configuration possible, efficient conductor. If it's in the basement, you have a lack of structure, you're too flexible, you don't follow the existing rules or procedures, you're constantly changing priorities, and you lack vision. This is also in the basement, an arranger. If it's in the basement, they're not really good at boundaries, whether it's their own or other people's. The boundaries are just tough for them too. So, belief, that's an executing domain. If it's in the balcony, it's passionate, steadfast, know where they stand, altruistic, family-oriented, ethical, and responsible. If it's in the basement, it manifests or presents like stubborn, set in their ways, elitist, unaccepting of other ideas, opinionated, goody two-shoes.
No.
It's hard to believe that I've been called a goody two-shoes. I'm like, me? Do you know me? Hey, I do have belief, but strange. Command. So people with command, okay, and you probably have worked around somebody with command. I know nobody here has it. It's either in your family, you've seen it, you've been around it. So when command's in the balcony, you're thankful for it, first of all, right? So they have charisma, they're direct, driven, inspirational, easy to follow, clear and concise. If they're in the basement, they're they're bossy, they're a know-it-all, domineering, rude, abrupt, short, strong-willed, inflexible, and then there's the stubborn. Communication is an influencing, and so was command, influencing domain. Storyteller, in the balcony, it's a storyteller, they have great presence, they're easy to talk to, they're an energizer, entertaining and charismatic. If it's in the basement, they're a blabbermouth, they're a poor listener, they're self-absorbed, they're a show-off, and they always need attention. Competition, influencing domain. In the balcony, when they're using it for good, it is driven, motivated, number one, measurement-oriented, and a winner. They want everyone on their team, everyone in their family to be a winner, right? If it's in the basement, they're sore losers, they're not team players, they put down others, they're self-centered or confrontational. Or that could be and too. Connectedness, that's in relationship building. If it's in the balcony, it's spiritual. God bless you. You don't sweat the small stuff. Strong faith, always looking at the big picture, helping others to see purpose. If it's in the basement, it's passive, naive, too idealistic, and wishy-washy. Yeah. Consistency is an executing function or a domain. That is in the balcony, just problem solver, policy maker. If it's in the basement, they're inflexible. This is where legalism comes in, guys. By the book, unwilling to customize or individualize. They can be so wrapped up in everybody gets the same no matter what. And here's a practical breakdown. This is where it breaks down in practice. If you have a family, for example, I'll use my kids. Sorry, Charles. So timeouts worked great for 3 of my children. It did not work for Hannah, ever. She would be in the corner counting, and I'm like, what are you doing in the corner? And she's like, well, I'm about to break this rule, so I just thought I'd go into timeout first. and so I was like, okay, we gotta have something different. And so it may have appeared like, that's not fair because the other kids, they get to go to timeout. And I'm like, well, timeout doesn't work for you. You don't even care about timeout. So we're gonna come up with something that works for you, child. So for somebody who is in the basement of consistency, they can't get past that. That's not fair. Hannah should be, she should have timeout as a penalty, just like the other kids. And so if Bob had been like that, or I had been like that, Hannah would be in prison today. I'm sure of it. She will attest to that too. So, both my girls were tough, but the boys, so you couldn't apply that. That just wouldn't work for them. Context is in the thinking domain, the strategic thinking domain. In the balcony, they have a robust historical frame of reference. They learn lessons from the past, they know how things came to be, and they can leverage knowledge of the past. If you've ever worked with Devon, she can tell you most everything. She wasn't involved in everything, but she can tell you how this came to be in the church, and this is why, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I have that context, because I had no idea. Now we can, because sometimes, when you're sharing space, you're like, what is that there for? And she's like, I know. Okay, so that's super important. Now, if it's in the basement, here's how it plays out. Slow to move and react to change, closed-minded, lives in the past. So if you have context and you just resist change, just know that change is life. It's just a part of life, and if you will not change, you're gonna really have a lot of difficulty. So don't let the enemy use it against you. It's a strength from God. Then you have deliberative, which is an executing domain. Good judgment, identifies risks, makes solid decisions, can plan for the unexpected. In the basement, standoffish, aloof, cautious, slow, introverted, and afraid to act. So my nephew, he is deliberative, strategic, and analytical, all three. And so oftentimes, when we have family gatherings, right, he's a super introvert, and he gets really overwhelmed with all of the chaos. And at my house, chaos is life. So he will often just disappear. Right? Like, I'm here for 5 minutes and that's about all I can take, and then he's gone. And so other members of the family will be like, I don't think he likes me. I guess I must have offended him. And I'm like, no, he's just overwhelmed by all of this activity. Like, let the man have some peace. He's out by the lake. Let him go. So he just really struggles with that. And it's not just his deliberative. He's got 3 in his mind. He spends a lot of time in his mind. So all of the connection is just hard for him. But he has to work on that too, so he knows that. He's aware of it, and he tries to pull it out of the basement when he can. Developer is a relationship building domain. If it's in the balcony, you grow talents in others. You're a teacher, a coach. You enjoy helping others succeed, and you invest in others. If it's in the basement, you're not an individual contributor. You waste time on low potential people, or you're a spectator. And this will be the last one that we review together. Discipline is an executing domain. If it's in the balcony, it presents with good judgment, somebody who identifies risk, makes solid decisions, and can plan for the unexpected. Oh, sorry, I already did that. I'm sorry, guys. You're like, what are you talking about? Discipline. This will be the last one we do. Discipline is an executing function. High productivity and accuracy because of ability to structure. They break down complex things into steps. They're great planners, and they promote efficiency. In the balcony, they're overbearing, rigid, mechanized, and they can't handle change. That's basement. That's basement. Oh, sorry guys, no, basement, keep me clear. So, people with discipline are great. If you have somebody, who's here got discipline? Okay. Hannah, that's great. Tori, wonderful. So oftentimes, if you're on a team, people can be overwhelmed. So you have a lot of ideators. You're like, here's 6,000 ideas, and everybody's like, let's put them all into how, so there's like all of that. So you guys will be able to see somebody who's overwhelmed and say, hey, let's break this into chunks. You guys, it can also mirror arrangers, but discipline people are like, that's what they do. They look at overwhelming tasks and they break it down because they're gonna tackle it, and they chunk it. So you guys can help those people who can be overwhelmed those ideators who are like, let's do it all, and you're like, okay, well, they're all great, but we can't get them all done, so let's chunk this. Let's break it down and make it into steps. So that's really, really powerful with discipline, how it plays out in the team environment, and of course individually. Okay, so last thing that I wanted to go over is the strengths discoveries, okay? So once you discover your strengths, these things should play out in your life, okay? So you think in a slightly more positive way about myself, or yourself and others. Others can help me to be more effectively managed, or I can more effectively manage others. I will only be able to accept others at the level that I accept myself. At its best, so people who are really critical of themselves, they're often critical of others. So that's why it's super important. And this is one of the things with grace, right? If you can't give grace, then you probably haven't fully received grace. And lots of people don't even realize that they haven't accepted all of God's grace, right? Like they don't forgive themselves because they're like, I don't deserve to be forgiven for that. So if you have not received the full grace of God, then you can't give the full grace of God. And it's the same thing. If you are critical of yourself, you're going to be critical of others. At its best, the management of a person in a role relies primarily on the objective measurement of their performance. At its worst, the management of a person in a role relies primarily on the subjective evaluation of their personality. The differences that naturally exist among people are not necessarily problems that I need to fix. They will often be potential that I can use. When we take pride in what we are not, thank goodness I don't have that, right? So, and I've said that, like, I'm thankful I don't have that, not because I don't like it, I actually am in awe of people who have that and manage it. For example, people with empathy, that I don't even know how they move forward, and they do all the time. I'm just in awe of that. So, but if you're looking at somebody like, thank goodness I'm not a maximizer, I'd be controlling everybody, you know, what is that? That's terrible, right? Like, those are the things you don't say. You look at other people's strengths as that, strengths, because every one of these are super valuable to God. And it's just like looking at God going, well, I wish I wasn't like that. What? No. Okay, so that's what they're talking about there. If you want people to do well, we will need to help them be well. Greater well-being will often lead to greater well-doing. Well-being and well-doing are interdependent realities. I think most of you have probably heard the saying, hurt people, right? That's what it comes. So when we're well, we're helping others to be well. When we have a healthy understanding of ourselves, we understand others better too. Some people are oriented towards people. Some people are oriented towards performance. Effective organizations must care equally about the nature and value of each person and the quality, quantity of their performance. So I forget which president's wife came up. Maybe it was Nancy Reagan. I don't know. No Child Left Behind. Anybody remember who? It was Obama. Is that what it was?
No Child Left Behind was Bush.
Bush? Okay, Bush. Laura Bush. Okay. So I think you're right. Okay, so No Child Left Behind, right? So many. I don't even know. It's a sign of age. But I love that, right? Because that's what this means. Every single person is important. And we're not going to run past anybody. Now, we have to be aware that some people don't like anybody to know that they're left behind, but like they're struggling. So that's why it's important that we have those includers and those woo people, right? Like, we need you to be like, there's somebody, they're not engaged, they're left behind, what can we do? And some people are introverts, so we still engage the introvert. How do we get them engaged? Something that they're comfortable with, okay? So it's the no person left behind mantra. Number 7, the soul of a person, that is who they are, probably cannot be changed dramatically. The role of a person, that is the part that they play, probably could be changed and adjusted. Organizations often do just the opposite. Roles become hard and fixed, and people need to be changed to fit them. They try to squeeze souls into roles rather than fit adjustable roles around predetermined soul. There's something powerful and beautiful that occurs when we help individuals find roles that truly fit their souls. Clifton's Strength Finder themes don't make people either great or terrible. People make Clifton's Strength Finder themes great or terrible. Will you be a theme poster child or a theme problem child? It all depends on whether you productively apply that which you have. If we use one word to describe a person, that is usually a negative intent. So I want you guys, if you have a pen or a pencil, I want you to star that. I want you to star that. I am positivity and idealistic. Sometimes in the basement it's naive or whatever. I can be naive even towards myself. So I'm like, oh, I never do that. I'm never like that. But that is so not true. When I challenge myself to be observant of myself, I found that I did sometimes do that. It was shocking. I was just shocked in my own behavior. Kathy, you shocked me, right? Because I didn't think I ever did that. But, so I challenge you to observe if you ever do that. If you ever use one word to describe somebody. Because we are so complex. There's so much more to a person than one word. If you break down someone by one word, then just think about that. Usually you're doing it in a negative context, right? And we're supposed to be building people up, even strangers. We're supposed to be building, not tearing down, unless we are. So those are some things that I'm gonna challenge you guys with. So when we meet the next time, what I'd like for you to do is become super familiar with your 5 strengths. Your 5 strengths. Write them down, put them in your car, put them on your mirror. You can take a whiteboard marker and write it on the mirror. Put it on your mirror and just start oh, that's my such and such happening. Oh, there it is. Whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. So that's what I want you guys to be doing. You're gonna, like, for a week, pastor's gonna be like, why is this whole church going, whoop, there it is. Everybody go up to him and tell him Sunday, whoop, there it is. Checked out. So see, whoop, there it is. See how often your strength is active, whether it's balcony or basement. If you can identify it in the balcony and basement, that's even better. Okay, that's what I want you to do. Like, oh, I'm using my power for evil right here. You know, so start looking for those things. So look for that, and also make a note of any time you describe somebody in your brain. Hopefully it never comes out of your mouth. It will never come out of my mouth. And then I'll go to the altar. But one-word descriptors, so awful. This was helpful to me, and I think it'll be helpful to you, because we live in a culture that promotes that. It teaches that. And so we just have to figure out where to help us to be kingdom builders, and not allow the world to shape us. Help us to use your strengths accordingly. So, thank every one of you for being here. I really appreciate your time. I hope you've found this helpful. If you don't mind, leave your tabletop. Suzanne has volunteered to get these printed correctly. And then we'll have them next time you come, okay? If you need to take a picture of them, if you didn't, feel free to take a picture of them. Take your packets home. Okay? And if you bring them next time, you can bring them. If you want to bring them, you don't have to bring them. If you would rather leave them, until next time, you can write your name on the folder if you want, and leave them here if you don't think you're gonna dive into them. But if you're really going to be observing some things, especially, we didn't get through all the balcony basement stuff, you need to look at that in your own time and see if your strength is in the balcony or in the basement. There's descriptions and things will help you. So we'll close in prayer, if you guys don't mind. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for your grace. We thank you for the intentional way that you've created each one of us. We know, God, that you have great purpose in our creation and the way we relate to you and others. And so we just invite you to continue to use us for your glory. Lord, we love you. We know we live in a world that is desperate for hope and just overwhelmed with all the crazy hopelessness and division and hate and all the things that we're experiencing, Lord. It's really hurting people, and we're grateful, God, that we have you as the compass of our spirit and our heart, and we can have peace in the midst of chaos, Lord. And we pray that we will be able to be a witness for you and point others to you, Lord, so that they too can experience peace even in the midst of chaos and tough things, Lord. Life is just hard. So I just pray for your hand to be upon every single person here, that you would draw close to them, and those that wanted to be here and couldn't, Lord, I pray that you would draw close to them and just love on them, Lord. Let them know that they were missed. We love you. We're grateful to be brothers and sisters through our relationship with you, Lord. It's a wonderful thing to be in the family of God. We love you so much, and we pray these things in your name. Amen. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. If anybody has questions,